He said the affair was a mistake, then asked us to forgive how long it lasted. My name is Tamsin Cole, and my voice did not break. The kitchen smelled like lemon oil and burnt toast, the ordinary scents that make betrayal feel sharper, because they do not change. My father stood near the sink, tie loosened, wedding ring shining like an apology. My mother sat at the table with a folded dish towel in her hands, white knuckles against blue embroidery. Outside, the gulls were loud over the harbor, and somewhere down our street a car alarm hiccuped, then quit. I ended it, my father said. It never meant what you think. I poured water into the kettle and watched the pale flame catch. I am 32, a school counselor by training, the person who knows how to count breaths with frightened kids until they find the ground. This was different. My mother nodded once, not in agreement, but in the way you nod when a train passes, and you mark its cars. She has a way of turning stillness into armor. She kept her eyes on the towel, then set it down with care. How long? She asked. Years, he said, and I heard my name in the silence that followed, as if I were the distance between them. I looked at the chipped rim of the sugar bowl, and the old calendar magnet from the garden center where Dad buys seedlings. I remembered being 10 and learning to deadhead roses with him on a bright Saturday, his laugh easy, his hands sure. I did not know then that love could hold a second life inside it like a sealed envelope, carried in a coat pocket, warm from the body, unread. The kettle clicked. I made tea for my mother and set it before her. She did not touch it. I made one for myself and kept it near my face, the steam a gentle distraction. He tried again. I never meant to hurt you, my father said. Either of you. There are words that deaden the air, and there are words that sharpen it. He chose the dull ones, the safe ones, and they rolled to a stop before they reached us. The truth was heavy, and it sat on the laminate table without ceremony. I wished, briefly, for a scene, for plates thrown or a shout that broke a glass, because drama has its own anesthesia. Instead, we had the humming refrigerator, and the soft groan of a neighbor's screen door, and my mother's small, composed breath as she lifted her cup. Thank you for telling us, she said. Her voice was steady, as if she were taking attendance. You can go now. He blinked, then winced like something inside him had tugged too hard. He put his palms on the counter, then took them away. We're still a family, he said. She did not answer. He left. The front door closed with a careful click, the kind you use when someone is sleeping. The house exhaled with him gone, a change I felt in how the floorboards stopped listening. I cleaned the cups. My mother wiped the table, and as she reached for the drawer that holds the dishcloths, something caught at the back and rattled. She slid the drawer free and set it on the table. Inside the cavity, behind the rails, lay a flat paper envelope, the kind that feels like a secret. She looked at it, then at me. Her face gave nothing away. She pulled the envelope out and weighed it in her palm, as if deciding whether to hand me a match. Later, she said quietly. We put the drawer back. We moved around each other like practiced dancers, making room for a new edge. I went to my room and sat on the bed and watched the small square of ocean in my window, pulsing like a bruise. Betrayal arrives louder than the world, then it fades to a hum that fills everything. I could feel the hum settling in my bones. By evening, neighbors had learned enough to lower their voices. My phone filled with messages I did not want to open. At the sink, my mother rinsed an apple and ate it standing up. The core clicked against the counter as she set it down. In the dark between our rooms, I listened to the short, precise way she breathed, and I understood something without words. Whatever was inside that envelope would not be for rage. It would be for understanding, and for the kind of justice that does not need anyone to clap. In the weeks that followed, our town wore a new expression when it looked at me. The grocery cashier smiled too brightly and bagged my milk with care, like an apology lived in her hands. At school, a faculty meeting paused when I entered late, and someone touched my shoulder as if I might break. In the hall, a student whispered, then flushed when our eyes met. I kept walking. The body remembers its route, the mind drags its heels. My father and I became people who scheduled. He texted to ask about coffee, sent times that didn't work, offered rain checks like flowers. I answered with gloves on, nothing sticky, nothing that would leave residue. My mother stayed the course. She went to work at the library, came home, cooked simple things, and placed leftovers in neat containers labeled with tape. She slept through the night, or pretended to. When I asked how she was, she said, "I am," and handed me carrots to slice. There are consequences that stand outside your door and refuse to leave. The woman he had chosen, her name was Lydia, had worked at the garden center part-time. I remembered her ponytail and the way she tucked a pencil behind her ear while she rang up seed packets. I remembered thinking she was kind to the older men who bought twine and stayed to talk about the weather. Now, when I passed the garden center, a different clerk looked away. I bought nothing. Soil on my hands felt like a lie. At night, the house made different sounds. My mother's radio went lower. My father's keys did not scrape our bowl. I reached for the envelope in my mind and left it shut. I needed to see clearly before I opened anything that could stain. My work with students steadied me. I sat in small chairs and handed tissue boxes to kids who had lost a pet, a parent, a friend. I taught them to name feelings without apology. After each session, I washed my hands and looked at myself in the paper towel dispenser, distorted in silver, a person half flattened by her own reflection. One Saturday, my father knocked, and I opened the door. He held a box of croissants from the bakery and a newspaper he would not read. He looked older than he had 2 months earlier. Some men grow weather around them. He carried a wind that smelled like dry leaves. "We should talk," he said. "We are," I said, and stepped aside. He sat at the table where the envelope had lived. My mother was at work, the hours she had chosen carefully, a kindness to herself. We ate in a quiet that felt arranged, like chairs set in a circle for a grief group. "I'm sorry," he said. The words were different from last time, smaller, less rehearsed. I don't know how I lost the thread. I did not argue. There is a kind of cruelty in being honest with a person who wants soft cloth over a wound that needs air. I watched him fold and unfold the paper napkin. He wanted a path back that was not covered in glass. I did not know if such a path existed, and it was not mine to pave. "I know about Lydia," I said. "I know it was long." He nodded. "Too long," he said. "It's done." He wanted this part simple. Clean lines, the way he liked his garage shelves. I could not give him that, not yet. My mother's stillness had weight, and I could not carry it away for him. I finished the coffee and rose. "Dad," I said, and his eyes brightened, because the words still held. "You can't ask us to lift you out of what you built. You can only stand up in it, and let your own legs shake." He breathed in, then out. "I'll do whatever you need," he said. "Good," I said, and looked at the clock. "Start with time." He left with the empty box under his arm, and I felt no pleasure in the small clarity I had offered. After he was gone, I went to the kitchen drawer and slid it open with my fingertips. The dishcloths were as she had left them, folded flat, soft from years of washing. Underneath, the envelope waited, patient as a tide. That night, my mother and I washed bowls in warm water. "We don't have to rush," I told her. She dried a spoon and placed it in the tray. "No," she said. "But we won't let this choose for us." After she slept, I stood at the drawer again. The house was a clock. Each tick was a reason to look or not look. I slid the drawer free, reached behind the rails, and took the envelope in both hands. It was heavier than paper should be. I held it against my ribs and felt a steady, quiet anger change shape into something I could use. I did not open it yet. I made a vow that felt like laying a straight edge on a cutting mat. When I opened it, I would not be looking for fire. I would be looking for a map. The envelope opened with that soft tear you only get once. Inside was a single photograph, glossy, 8 by 10, its edges worn from being handled and then put back. The picture showed my father at the town pier in a windbreaker I remembered, with his arm around Lydia. She was round-faced and beautiful in a way that didn't ask your permission. In her arms, bundled and blinking in the bright day, was a newborn. On the back, in my mother's clean script, was one line: "If you are looking for why, start here." Below the words, a date from 13 years ago. The math laid itself down like rails. 13 years. The affair had not only been a private disloyalty. It had a child inside it, a parallel life that had learned to walk while we ate birthday cake and watched fireworks from our deck. My hand shook once, then steadied. The photograph explained the particular way my mother had carried silence, not as surrender, but as stewardship. She had known, maybe not from the beginning, but long enough. She had kept the truth safe until I was old enough to hold it without smashing. There was a second item beneath the photo, thin as a breath. A receipt from our family business, Cole Harbor Services, signed by my father, paying a lease on an apartment in the next town, the memo line marked, storage. The amount was wrong for storage. I know rent when I see it. The date matched the winter after the photo. Slow, careful, deliberate. The picture was the proof of the heart, the receipt was the proof of the hands. I made a copy of both at the library before opening, the way my mother would. I borrowed the back office when she took her lunch and watched the machine breathe light across paper, revealing and preserving. On my way out, I almost ran into Mrs. Green from the Historical Society. She smiled kindly, then saw my face and softened it further. "Your mother has always had a spine like a lighthouse," she said. "So do you." That afternoon, I called someone I trusted, not because she was family, but because she made questions clean. Her name was Asha Patel, a lawyer who had been a year ahead of me in high school. She ran a small practice that handled contracts, estates, and the sort of disputes that could eat a town by winter if not settled by fall. We met at a cafe near the water, where the windows made everything look temporarily forgiven. "I need advice," I said, sliding the copies across the table. "I don't want to scorch the earth. I want the ground to hold." Asha took her time. She looked at the photo, then the receipt. She did not say sorry. Instead, she wrote 2 neat columns on a yellow pad labeled with dates and possibilities. "There are personal truths," she said, tapping the photo, "and there are business facts," tapping the receipt. "Sometimes they braid together. Sometimes you separate them so no one hangs." "I don't want revenge," I said. "Not the loud kind." "Good," she said. "Quiet justice works better here, and it lasts longer." We ordered tea. She asked about the company structure, about tax returns, about who signed checks. I told her what I knew, which was enough to light a path. My father held majority shares, my mother a significant minority, a decision made when the business grew from a truck and a card file into a small fleet and a tidy office with a bowl of peppermints near the door. I remembered helping my mother stamp invoices when I was 12, the ink damp and satisfying. "If company funds were used for personal expenses," Asha said, "that's not only a betrayal, it's a problem with teeth. It opens doors we can choose to walk through or simply let him see from the threshold." She drafted a letter, not an accusation, but an invitation to correct course. Its language was cool and even, a level plank set over a drop. She suggested we request a meeting with my father, my mother, Asha, and the company accountant, a man named Doyle who had been with us forever and never liked drama. We would present the discrepancies without heat. We would ask for a reallocation of shares to reflect the harm and the risk. We would require a separation of personal and business accounts, with oversight. We would keep the photo private. We would protect the child whose eyes I could not forget. Quiet does not mean weak, Asha said, sliding the letter back to me. It means chosen. I went home and found my mother kneeling in the garden, pushing marigolds into the soil for fall. I knelt beside her and placed the folded letter on the dirt between us like a seed packet. I saw, I said. She looked up. Her eyes were clear. I wondered when you would. I want to do this without breaking anyone who didn't choose this, I said. That is the line, she said. We set the marigolds in neat rows. My hands grew brown and smelling of rain. The letter sat between us, catching the light. Resolve, I learned, is not a feeling. It is the work you choose under quiet sky. We met in the company office on a Thursday, when the trucks were out and the phones slower. The blinds were half open, light slicing the room into tempered shapes. Doyle, the accountant, had brought ledgers, a laptop, and the excellent calm of a man who trusts columns to tell the truth. Asha arrived with her slim briefcase and a small nod for my mother. I wore a cotton dress and the watch my grandmother left me, the hands moving with their usual mercy. My father came last. He took in the room and seemed to understand, not the details, but the shape. He sat opposite us, setting his palms on the worn wood of the table that had known every invoice and every plan. Asha began. Thank you for coming, she said. We want clarity and a path forward. Doyle opened a file and walked through the numbers with no adjectives. He pointed to a series of payments marked storage that aligned with an apartment on Harbor Lane. He noted a credit card used for personal groceries, clothing, and a second phone. He spoke in the slow, patient cadence that makes hard truths digestible. My father nodded once, then again, trying to schedule his reactions. This looks bad, he said quietly. It is, Doyle said, not unkindly. My mother placed the photograph on the table, face down. She did not slide it toward him. She did not need to. We know, she said. He reached for the picture, then stopped. His hand hovered over the back as if the ink might smear. He did not turn it over. I wanted to spare you, he said, and then he looked at me. The sentence failed in my direction. We are not spared, I replied. My voice was a calm line. We are choosing what to do next. Asha outlined the proposal. Reallocation of shares to give my mother controlling interest. Immediate separation of accounts with third-party oversight. Restitution to the company, structured so it would not destroy him, but would teach his hands to carry weight honestly. A resignation from daily operations for a season, with a transition plan that included hiring a manager whose only allegiance would be to the health of the business. Confidentiality about the photo, to protect the child. Honesty, however, about the misuse of funds, in records that mattered. He listened. His jaw worked like he was learning to chew again. You're taking the company, he said. We're saving it, I said. And we're saving what can be saved of you. He laughed once, a dull sound, then closed his mouth again. He looked at my mother only once, and what passed between them then was not hate. It was older. It was the recognition of a road reached after separate hikes, the same map crumpled in two different backpacks. What if I refuse? He asked, though he already knew. Asha's voice stayed gentle. Then we can pursue a different remedy, she said, one with courts and records and a public that loves a story when winter is long. He looked at the blinds, at the light making white ladders on the wall. He turned over the photo finally, and his breath changed. He touched Lydia's shoulder in the picture, then the small blur of a baby's cap. His fingertip left no mark. When he looked up, his eyes were not asking for forgiveness. They were asking for the dignity of a person who knows exactly where he stands. "Okay," he said. "I'll sign." Doyle slid the documents forward. My mother signed first, her name clean and unadorned. I signed as a witness, my letters steadier than my hands felt. Asha notarized with quiet efficiency. When my father took the pen, it skidded once at the start of his last name, then found its groove. He set the pen down, palms empty now. "I'll tell Lydia," he said. "I'll keep the rest private." "Good," my mother said. It was the first word she gave him that day. She took the photograph and slipped it back into her folder, not like evidence, but like a portrait. We stood. Chairs made soft protest against the floor, then fell still. Outside, a truck reversed with its familiar beep, a sound that meant labor and habit, not triumph. My father looked at me, and the boy I had been to him was there, for a second, young and unhurt. Then the second went, and we were who we were. "Thank you," he said. He did not mean for mercy. He meant for the path we had made and let him walk. We left the office piece by measured piece. No slamming doors, no overheard lines to feed the town. Only a clean threshold and feet that knew how to cross. October brought that thin, golden light that makes even cracked sidewalks look patient. The company adjusted quickly, because work rarely waits for hearts to finish their chores. A new manager learned the routes and the customers who prefer to talk about their tomatoes before paying. Doyle set up proper guardrails, and Asha visited twice to check the fit of what we had built. My mother took the head office softly, as if she were borrowing a book. She moved the peppermint bowl an inch to the left and watered the philodendron with a teacup. At home, our kitchen found a new rhythm. We ate at the table with the window cracked, and the sea kept its own counsel. On Sundays, my mother read in the living room chair while I baked bread, the smell of yeast filling the rooms that had learned to carry more than one truth at once. We did not mention the photo, and yet it lived with us in a tender way, like a portrait of an ancestor you never met but thanked for your cheekbones. One afternoon, I saw Lydia at the pharmacy, her cart full of ordinary things. She met my eyes, then waited, as if for judgment or flight. I stood still. "Hi," I said. "Hi," she said. Her voice held the fatigue of someone who learned long ago to sleep with one ear open. I didn't expect kindness. "This isn't kindness," I said. "It's distance," kept respectfully. She nodded. "He told me," she said. "About the company. About the money." "That part was needed," I said. She touched the handle of her cart. "He also said you kept the photo private," she said. "Thank you." "We kept the child private," I corrected gently. A small smile touched her mouth. "She likes kites," she whispered, as if telling me a holy fact. "The way they tug and still come home." I carried that sentence with me for days. You can love someone and still know that the nearest kindness is distance. You can respect a child's existence and refuse to break her world to fix your own. Quiet revenge is not the opposite of love. It is love shaped into a boundary that holds. When the paperwork finished and the payments began, my father asked to meet. We chose a bench by the harbor. The gulls were busy, the water stippled with late wind. He wore a sweater I gave him for his birthday years earlier. It hung looser now. "I'm working with Doyle every week," he said. "It feels good to be told what to do." "That will change," I said, not unkindly. "You'll learn again." He looked at his hands. "I keep thinking about that day at the pier," he said. "How I thought I had found something that made me younger. It made me small instead." "We don't get younger," I said. "We get honest, if we're lucky." He nodded. "I would like to come by on Sundays sometimes," he said. "To read the paper on your porch." "That can happen," I said. In time. We sat without speaking. Justice does not always make applause. Often, it makes quiet people with a little more room between their ribs. When he stood to go, he touched the bench once, a wordless thank you to wood and weather. I walked home through the long light and felt my body belong to me again. Winter leaned in, then eased. On the first warm day, my mother and I turned the soil in her narrow beds. We wore old jeans and wide hats. Our hands found worms, stones, and the stray marble that had lived lost in the dirt since I was 8. We laughed, real sound, the kind that lives in your throat and decides to stay. We planted peas and sweet alyssum. The garden settled and remembered the lesson it had taught us long before any of this. You can set something small in the ground and trust it to become itself without anyone watching too closely. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table and took the photograph from my mother's folder. I looked at the young faces caught in wind and light and the soft, stubborn miracle of a new life in someone else's arms. I slipped the picture back between its protective sheets and sealed it away. Not as evidence anymore. As history. I cleaned the table, wiped the counter, and opened the window. The room cooled into clarity. My mother hummed in the hall. The house, at last, had found its level. There were no speeches to deliver, no final blows to land. Only a family rearranged around truth, a business that would go on, a child whose kites would pull at the sky and return. Morning comes whether we deserve it or not. That is its mercy. When it reached our kitchen the next day, it found 2 women brewing coffee and a small vase of marigolds steady in their orange, calm as a kept promise. I touched the rim of the mug and felt the quiet settle like a blanket laid straight. The worst had already happened. The rest was work, and we were good at work. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.